That's the most orchestration I could do, everyone. Be grateful for that. Hello, hello. Thank you for coming to the Story Salon. Thank you so much for being here. There's people who are here on a regular basis. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for doing this. And for any of the new people that have come in, even more, I appreciate it for you to move into this brave new world and see what we do. My name is Beverly Mickens, and I'm the host and the founder of Story Salon. As I often like to say, that's where you is, and that's also where you at, even on Zoom. And I know that within another 6-7 weeks, we'll be able to meet in person and go back to our regular fabulous live shows. So stay tuned for that. We'll let you know what's going on. But in the meantime, we've got Zoom, and I'm grateful for that. So tonight, we've been doing theme nights, and tonight I think is a particularly, how can I say, it's a ripe storytelling theme. And it is, I knew I'd remember this night. That is our theme for this evening. I knew I'd remember this night. And we got like just a perfect little consortium of people to tell you a story about their night and why they knew they remember it. But before we start, I got to give a huge shout out, drum roll, shout out to the skies, to the woman who makes this all possible, because otherwise we'd be shouting through each other through like a tin can with like a little wire attached to it. Please give a shout out to Amber Greenberg. Hooray! All hail, Amber Greenberg, all hail. Without her, we'd be nothing. So thank God for this woman. And actually that pretty much is it, I think. I'm glad that you're here. And so settle back, get nice and comfy, and make sure that you get a beverage, some popcorn, whatever you like, something crunchy. And if you get something crunchy, it's fine, because we won't be able to hear it. So crunch loud, crunch hard, and crunch loud. And just be ready for our wonderful show tonight. And we're going to start off with a woman who, go to Lila. Lila has a website. Knock on her door, talk to her, because she has some beautiful, terrific books. Memories of a Prom
Queen. Should have them all here. I always forget. Yeah.
Okay. She has written many books. She's done many one-person shows. She's asked to do her stories all around town. She is truly our storytelling sophisticate. Please welcome her, Miss Lila Silvern.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Jerry, for your help. At this point, I'd like to have that tin can that I could, it might be better for me than the Zoom technology. But anyway, I'm glad to hear you, to be here and to see so many of my friends here. Good feeling. This is a story that was in my Confessions book, but it's also going to be in my new book, Chalkboard Confidential. And it's entitled, What the World Needs Now is More Global Warming. Joe and I used to work in the same school, and we flirt occasionally at the coffee maker or the copy machine. He was happily married, and I was happily divorced. We hadn't seen each other for 5 years when he called to tell me he'd separated from his third wife, and he called to invite me to a movie. Afterwards, we returned to my house for a glass of wine and to catch up on what we'd been doing the past 5 years. Joe filled me in on his ensuing divorce, making it sound agreeable, civilized, and not the least bit bitter. Then he asked what I'd been doing with my time since retirement. I've been writing, I told him. Are you doing your sexy memoirs? He winked and grinned. Well, not exactly, I hated to confess. What I have been passionately involved in this past year is a series of lessons on global warming. He poured another glass of wine, and he tried not to look disappointed as I proceeded to tell him more than he wanted to know about the curriculum that I had spent months creating. I brought out a box filled with examples of my work. I started with a letter from Mrs. Polar Bear begging the children of the world to save the melting glaciers and her twin cubs. While Joe struggled to suppress a yawn, I demonstrated the history of fossil fuel by pressing strips of colored felt on a black flannel board to represent millions of years of pressure that eventually produced purple felt cutout oil well, a black smudge of coal, a white cotton dot of gas, and a yellow construction paper light bulb. I enacted all the parts of the Arctic food web paper bag puppet play. Red krill, what do you see? I even extracted the Go Green Bingo game and asked if he wanted to play. I had to repeat my question because Joe nodded off for a moment. He awoke with a start and complimented me on the good work I had done. Do you want a cup of hot chocolate? I asked because he had his jacket over his chest like a blanket and he was blowing on his hands. It was a cold November night and my house was a bit chilly. I know I should put on the heat, I apologized, but since this project, I've become so aware of the importance of conserving fossil fuel. Joe looked at his watch, which was hard to read because of the dim 60-watt fluorescent bulbs I had replaced in my lamps. Then he looked out the window at a light rain that was beginning to fall. Do you still live in West Covina? I asked. He nodded, yes. His eyes that had once hinted of carnal delights now seemed to droop with drowsiness. How long a drive is it? I asked. Oh, about an hour, he said, yawning again. Crazy thing is that I have to be in Hollywood tomorrow morning, just 10 minutes from here. Oh, I lifted my curriculum from my lap and I placed all my other elementary school realia on the table. He laid his request beside it. Would you mind if I sleep over? Here on the couch, I asked, taking off my glasses. He pressed the cushions as if testing a new mattress. Sure, he answered. I thought about it. I looked out the window at the rain coming down. I considered turning the heat on. I said, well, I guess you can. I don't see any reason. Before I could finish, he jumped up, raced to his car, and returned, carrying an umbrella, an overnight bag, and a toiletry kit. I walked to the linen closet for some sheets. I was even considering a reset of the thermostat when Joe began to help me with the bedding. His chin resting on a pillow, he looked down at me from his 6-foot height and sounding more like Johnny Cochran in a courtroom than Casanova in the boudoir, he asked me to reconsider his final resting place for the night. Should it be the living room sofa, he began, where sheets, pillowcases, and blanket would need to be laundered, causing you to have to use additional gas for the dryer and to heat the water, plus all that water needed to fill the machines and the coal required to generate the electricity? Then, of course, the extra lighting that would be turned on in 2 rooms, not to mention turning on the heat to keep the chihuahua from freezing to death. Ah, I looked at him. He smiled. Your king-size bed has enough room for 2. Wouldn't require additional bedding, extra lighting, or more heat. He had been listening after all. I smiled to myself. I did a quick recall of research estimating that the average American adult emits about 20 tons of CO2 a year. Why, just turning on a light 3 hours a day generates 340 grams of carbon dioxide. No one has ever done a study comparing couples with singles and the differing effects on the ecosystems. A lot has been said and written about egos, but what about ecos? I pondered our carbon footprints. Joe had very large feet, and he probably could generate a lot of thermal power in bed. We were old friends. We'd known each other since the 70s. The night was unseasonably rainy and cold, probably due to climate change. I haven't slept beside a woman in over a year, he confessed. I silently calculated it had been nearly a year since I'd spent the whole night with a man. After a second of serious consideration, I relieved him of the bedding and replaced it in the linen closet. I took out an extra towel and I handed it to him, pointing to the bathroom and down the hall and then to the bedroom. I turned down the thermostat, threw a sweater over Buster the Chihuahua, and lit some aroma candles.
Oh,
Thank
that
you.
was Miss Lila Silverman, ladies and gentlemen. Yay! You know what?
My teacher book.
Yes, yes. I think Al Gore would be proud of you. I think Al Gore would say, yeah, let him stay over. What the hell? And I think Joe was working his new Green Deal on his own, if you get my drift. Yes, and Lila has a new book coming out called Chalkboard Confidential.
Yeah.
I'm going to be excited about that. Let that fly off the shelves, ladies and gentlemen. We'll
Yeah, you should get it. Yeah.
yeah,
For
so
the next time.
Get to the end of the evening. Because this is she's like she's her own Oprah book club. So make sure to get not only her first book, but the second book. Thank you, Lila.
Thank you.
We're going to bring up someone. Oh my God, I haven't seen, well, because of the pandemic, I haven't seen Vince in almost well over like a year and a couple of months. And Vince would come to our salon regularly. And one of the reasons I loved him and I loved his writing was because he really digs deep. I was so impressed that he was willing to sort of expose a lot of stuff about himself and just really willing to dig into his story. And I love that. And I just love listening to his stories. He is so grand and so good. And he is here tonight. Mr. Vince Sheffaloo.
Thank you, Beverly.
Thank you.
It was really great talking to you too. It just felt like that year went by really quick in our last two conversations. You know, just everybody there, the camaraderie, the support really means a lot. You don't realize some of these things until they're not there or you can't have them. And it just was just nice being able to touch base. Thank you guys so much for listening to my piece. I wrote this about a month ago before things had changed a little bit, but it's still pretty relevant. If you're like me, getting the vaccine has brought out a lot of confusion, frustration, and mixed in with just the right amount of anxiety. Is it my turn yet? Do I qualify? Should I say I have an underlying condition and cut in line? I mean, let's face it, waiting is not easy. Ever since Moderna and Pfizer had their emergency authorization approved to start vaccinating people, I, like everybody else, have been waiting. And if patience is a virtue, let's just say I won't be winning an award anytime soon. We've all heard the stories of people that were waiting their turn, but got COVID instead. And they passed away before they could get their shot. I mean, it's tragic. I mean, there's just no way to vaccinate 350 million people efficiently, especially when you consider the train wreck we had in the Oval Office these past 4 years. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things have turned around now that we have adults running the show. The news has definitely gotten better and there are more shots available now than ever before. But that hasn't made the process any easier. And I know I'm not alone. I have friends and family all over the place doing the exact same thing. Unfortunately, there's just no consistency as places are vaccinating anyone while LA was 65 and over at that time. Now it sounds like it'll be next week when it's 50 or over, and after that, 16 and over. That's all great, but where do you go to get your shot? My turn, CA COVID, Walgreens. I even left my message for my doctor to see if I could go there and get it, and she hasn't even called me back. I mean, it's not easy to navigate, even for someone who thinks he knows his way around the internet. And don't get me started on the parents blaming the poor teachers because they were afraid of going back. My sister's a teacher, my niece is a teacher. I mean, why would they want to be stuck in a room not knowing which kids might be sick? The offices we work at are closed, but we expect the schools to be open. I mean, it's ridiculous to me. The plan now for LA Unified is for the kids to go back to school and stay in one room the entire day taking online classes. It's like, what? The teacher there won't be teaching the class. She's just in the class for the kids. They'll be taking online classes from other teachers in other classrooms. I mean, is that crazy? I mean, my son has been home for over a year. He misses his friends and he wants to be back at school, but not like this. I'd rather he stay safe and go back in the fall when more people are vaccinated. So last Friday, I decided to start calling pharmacies that are near me to see if they ever have any leftover vaccines at the end of the day. Walgreens and CVS said no, they're so overbooked with appointments that it'd be rare to have any. So I called the Rite Aid near my house and recognized the pharmacist who answers the phone. Her name is Viola, and she's given my son and I our flu shots for the past 4 or 5 years. We don't even get our prescriptions there, just our flu shots. My son hates shots, and every time we've been there, she's always made sure that he feels comfortable so he can get the shot, and his anxiety level goes down the minute we walk in and goes, oh, it's Viola. She also gives him a free ice cream cone afterwards, so that might have something to do with it. But you remember people like Viola, even if you see them just once a year. So Viola says they almost never have any shots either, but I could call back around 7:45 tonight to see. So being a guy that doesn't follow directions, I call back at 7:15. And she said to try back in a half an hour. So here I was sitting home on a Friday night, and I start getting really anxious. Would they have one left? What if someone arrived before I did and they got the last shot? So I decided to get in my car and drive there. I walk in at 7:30 and Viola looks up from behind the pharmacy window and just starts laughing because, of course, I'm early. Told me the last appointment was for 7:45, but I could wait and see if I wanted to. Well, of course I wanted to wait. So I found a place to stand across from the counter. I close my eyes and I start saying silently to my mom, who passed away in 2018, Mom, if you can hear me, please let me be the one to get the shot if no one shows up. So I start pacing back and forth like an expectant father, getting more and more anxious as the minutes barely tick away. There are other people that are getting their shots, so I have no idea whether they're the 7:45 person or not. Maybe I should have just stayed home because now I'm in torture. 7:35, 7:36, 7:37. I finally look up and notice all the people staring at me. I probably look like the vaccine stalker from hell, mumbling to myself. I forced myself to look down because I didn't want Viola or any other pharmacist to feel guilty. 7:39, 7:40, 7:41. All of a sudden, I started to feel really bad. Was I putting negative energy out into the universe that I secretly didn't want some person that I never met at 7:45 to not show up? I mean, what if that person really needed the shot? Would my bad karma keep them from getting it? Honestly, I haven't felt that anxious since I did my one-man show years ago. All the pent-up and frustration and nerves of the last 14 months caught up to me all at one time. I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. I was, at that moment, completely powerless to do a damn thing other than wait. Like I said, if patience is a virtue, screw patience. I finally looked at my phone. It was 7:50. All of a sudden, one of the pharmacists calls me over. My heart is racing. I was so nervous. I step up to the counter. Was she going to tell me the other person showed up and there weren't any left? Was she going to tell me I had 10 more minutes? Or was she going to tell me that they all voted and security was now going to walk me outside? Actually, it was none of those. She smiled and thanked me for being so patient. The other person never showed up, and they had one vaccine left. One, and it was mine. I said, are you sure? Should we wait just in case they show up? She said they need to close the pharmacy at 8 and they couldn't keep the vaccine any longer because the bottle was open. She handed me the paperwork to fill out, took my insurance, my driver's license, and asked me to wait outside of the little room for my shot. Oh my God, I'm going to get vaccinated. I mean, over a year of wondering if my turn would ever come, and now I was a few minutes away from having that needle in my arm. I think I was even more anxious than I was before. What if something happens? What if there isn't enough left for the one shot? Could they just give me a Xanax while I wait? 5 minutes later, she has me in the room with my sleeve rolled up. She prepares the vaccine. Literally, I almost started crying. You know, all those months hoping my time would come, even though there was no guarantee it ever would. All the months of isolation when my heart was racing out of control, when I heard more sad news about how many people were getting sick and dying flashed before my eyes. The whole thing just didn't seem real. A few minutes later, I was vaccinated. I must have thanked the pharmacist 10 times. I walked out of the room and went over to Viola. I could tell she was smiling because I've gotten really good at watching someone's eyes to see their emotions while their mask covers their face. I thanked her for all the time she's comforted my son these past few years. I thanked her for today because I knew she had something to do with me getting that shot. And I thanked her for giving me something I hadn't had in a really long time: hope. Viola said it was meant to be, and to call her the morning of my second shot so she could tell me what time to come in. So I waited my 15 minutes to make sure I didn't have any adverse reactions, and I left. I walked out of there in sort of a shock. I mean, everything that had just happened. I got in my car and I prayed that the person who couldn't make it was okay and that they could get their shot as soon as possible. I thanked my mom. I thanked the universe for shining a silver or a sliver of light of hope while they were watching over me. As I sat there in that quiet parking lot of Rite Aid on a Friday night in North Hollywood, I knew I would remember this night for the rest of my life. And then I drove home. So quick update. I just got my second shot from Viola last week. When she was done, I handed her a gift card and a thank you note just to say how much I appreciated everything she did for me. She looks up and says, "You didn't need to do that." And I just smiled back and said, "Yeah, I did." I know I'm one of the lucky ones. I mean, last summer, I didn't know anybody who had COVID. Now we all know someone. My sister got sick, still hasn't fully recovered in Paris. Her taste and sense of smell and taste haven't come back all the way. I have a friend who had 2 holes drilled in the side of her head to relieve the pressure she was having from COVID. There's so many people who are not as fortunate as I am, and so many lives have lost, leaving loved ones the scars of the pandemic for the rest of their lives. We all want to be healthy. We all need to heal. I hope everybody gets vaccinated as quickly as possible because your turn is coming. And until then, please stay safe, and whatever you do, don't give up hope.
Oh, thank you, Vince Shefalou. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Vince, so much. Oh my gosh. So he has had his second vaccination and is available for hugs and kisses.
Woo!
Woo! Here's a man right now available for some deep tissue healing. So please do that. Thank you, Vince. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I am delighted to bring this young stalwart man up. Ty has done so many of our shows, and I'm always so grateful because, in fact, I left a message for him today, and I said, you know, it's so great having you on the show. Number one, I love you, and I love what you do. But number two, it's like I know that I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to be able to sit back. Yes, thank you. Sit back in my seat and go, ah. He is remarkably gifted. He has this terrific way of weaving this tale and just keeping you in your seat until the very end. And then at the end, you feel like, more. Welcome him, Mr. Ty Fance.
Woo! Woo! Thank you so much. Oh man, this is going to be a trip to the silly side of Ty Fance. Plenty of things have happened to me that I should have remembered, and when it came to doing this show, I was like, oh man, how am I going to pick one? So I literally threw a dart at my book of stories, and this one got lit up. So there you go. Here we go. So as a young man, I didn't really, when it came to like physical confrontations and resolutions of such, I did not ascribe to the idea of laying hands on people. Unfortunately, the dudes in my neighborhood did not appreciate my nonviolent philosophy. So I had to develop a secondary philosophy, running. and I could run with the best of them. But as you probably know, you can't outrun everybody or every situation all the time. So eventually I decided that after a couple of times of failing to really defend myself, that I might want to look into some kind of defense. And fortunately, there was I lived in the hood, so most of the stuff I did was free. In this case, it was a free Taekwondo class, and I was a diehard Bruce Lee fan. So I was up in there, Of course, the sensei said to me, "No, no, we don't do that here." So I take the class, and I get pretty good at it. Pretty good at it. So fast forward, I'm in my mid-30s. A couple of years ago. Okay,
Ah,
okay, a couple of centuries ago. No, just kidding. But I'm in my mid-30s and I'm vacationing in Palm Springs. And I'm running around looking for a place to work out because I'm an outdoorsy kind of guy. So I'm looking for a park or some space. And then I remembered that I met a karate master named Tom at this tournament that I was participating in Torrance, California. Now, when he saw me, he walked over me. I was by myself because I never really joined a full-on dojo. I would just go to these events. Sometimes I watch, and then sometimes I participate. This particular case, I signed up. And afterwards, he saw me and said, "Hey, I really like the way you competed today. And, you have this high level of respect for the martial arts and the other participants." That was one of the things about karate that I dug, is the honor, respect, and the discipline that made you a very good martial artist. That was important, but also made you a really good human being. And I enjoyed that part too. So I appreciated that he appreciated me. And then he went on to say that, "Hey, if you're ever in Palm Springs," of course, I'm from Compton. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing in Palm Springs, right? But it just so happens I was there, and he said, "If you're in Palm Springs, feel free to come by and train at our dojo." I'm like, "Cool. I don't have to go to the park and get dirty. I can go in the gym." So I look him up, and I find the gym, and I go in. And true to his word, he welcomed me with open arms, and introduced me to his senseis, all of his instructors, and some of the students, right? And they were all happy that I was there because I was this new uh, new meat or whatever, new item in the dojo, right? This unknown, but yet they were fascinated by the fact that I was there. Except this one guy, okay, this one student, big guy wearing a green belt. And I got to tell you guys something about gyms. I've been in a few of them over the years, and there's always one guy. There's always one guy who has it in his brain that he is the stuff. I was going to use another word, but he's the guy. And you can usually tell by the way they pose. I don't care what class it is, man. You could be in a mixed martial art class, you could be a basketball class, you could be a boxing class, you can be in Pilates.
ah,
There's going to be somebody who think they're the stuff, right? Well, this happened to be the cat. This guy was about 6'2", green belt. There's different levels of karate belts, in case you don't know. There's the beginning, which is white. Then it goes all the way up to black. So you can go several layers before you get there. Green happens to be right in the middle, kind of. So he wasn't quite a professional, but he wasn't new. And but he had no, it was totally indifferent to the fact that I was there. I'm like, all right, fine. I just ignored him. I'm only here for the day. So the first thing we do is we warm up. We do some stretches and stuff, which is kind of fun. You kind of get some camaraderie going on. You help each other stretch. You hold each other's legs up, and then we started to do basic drills. Now that's where you learn to block. You learn a punch technique, like a reverse punch, or a front kick, which can be very effective if you do it and time it right. So we did that for a while, and I felt good. It was kind of non-threatening and fun. By the way, I'm a black belt at this time, so I'm very good at this stuff. And so, but I'm not. It's not my class, my dojo. So I'm a visitor. So I'm basically doing the basics with everybody, and I'm enjoying it because it's not threatening at all. Well, then they decided, okay, great, enough for warming up and doing all that good stuff. Let's go ahead and start sparring. Okay, well, sparring is a very necessary thing about martial arts. It's where you get to test your ability to deliver a technique under pressure. The key thing about sparring is when you're fighting an opponent, your classmate, you're not trying to kill him. What you what you're trying to do is score on them effectively, but without really injuring the person. So what generally happens after that is after you do a good score, the acknowledgement is that you stop sparring, you back up, you reset, and then you start again. Okay. And to begin these sessions, the teacher will say, Hajime, which means begin. Okay. All right. So they're sparring, and I'm like, nope, I'm not doing that. You guys go ahead. I'll watch. And so all the senseis and the grandmaster guy, Tom, and I are standing in the front of the class, and they're all going at it. And it's kind of exciting to watch it because you see the different levels, and people are excited when they get a hit in or they do a good block, and especially if a surprise block. I don't know if you've ever done any martial arts sort of thing where you do something that's you train to do it, but you're kind of scared and you do it, and it's very exciting to watch that. So some of the kids are having that moment. And occasionally they just wrestle, and the senseis will walk over and break them up and maybe offer some instructions. Worst scenario is typically you get a guy in there or a gal, could be, and they're just too aggressive. So one of the things the senseis would do is walk over and say, hey, turn it down. It's not a real fight. Well, it turns out that green belt was that latter guy. He had to be warned several times to kind of tone down his activity because he was doing a lot of that with some of the newer belts, the smaller kids, and even the girls. And I was noticing it, but nobody really said anything, so I didn't say anything because I'm business. So Sensei looks at me and says, I saw you fight at the tournament. Would you like to spar? And I'm thinking, no. See, what happens is the new guy, they all want to test me, some of this, especially the guys with the ego. And basically, I have to defend myself, right? I said, no, I'll pass on that. Well, then I thought better of it because that's an honor to be asked. So I said, okay, now I'm standing at the end of the line. It's the very beginning. And then he moves me into the middle, right lined up with green belt guy. Now this I thought was kind of weird because I've been watching this guy and I'm like, this is not the cat I want to be sparring with. But at the same time, I knew I could handle myself. So we line up. I bow respectfully to him. He does not reciprocate. His bow was kind of dishonorable and not very sincere. And I went, okay, whatever. So Sensei lines us up and he goes, Hajime. Now, homie, green belt, throws a right hand at me, right? I move, counter it, and I counter him in the stomach and I go on top. 2 techniques, right? And then I back off. I hit him cleanly. He hits me afterwards. That's not allowed because basically once you make contact, you're done. You back off that and you start over. So I'm like, oh, okay, wait. I'm sorry. Let me explain what just happened. See, I hit you twice. We were supposed to stop. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I was just following through, which didn't really sound that sincere to me. I'm like, all right, whatever. I didn't get hurt. It's all good. So I'm thinking we clear. So we bow up again. Hajime, whoo, he punches. I shift to the left, hit him in the stomach, come on top, bam, and I back off. He hits me again. Now I'm like, this mofo. He's no respect for me. I'm thinking because I'm a black belt and an older guy, he might just take it easy. He's tripping. And I go, all right, fine. Because I'm thinking he's confident that I'm doing these basic stuff, punches, kicks, straight up and down. No, nothing really dramatic. So I go, all right, fine. This is what I'm going to do for you, pal, in my head. I'm going to give you something really advanced. This is something I've done in the past and would do it to intimidate the other guy or maybe earn a level of respect. It's what they call a back heel crescent. You basically reverse. You spin backwards. So the heel comes out sideways and hits the guy in the head. And it's a pretty devastating technique. I can't do it now. But back then, I could do it. So I said, okay, now I'm not going to hit the guy because I ain't trying to get beat up by all these other black belts up in this school. But I will do the technique safely. What that means, I'm going to pull back far enough that when he moves forward, I've got enough space to do this technique and get, and then get back. So we bow up and he goes, the sensei says, Hajime, and I pull back. I mean, I even take an extra step, spin around, do the technique and come back. Now, when I come back, I'm expecting to see him stand there with the goofy look on his face, like, okay, I'm sorry. No, he's not there. He moved. Now I'm concerned. I put both my hands up like a boxing move, and I wonder where the hell he went. Because any minute now, I'm expecting to be thumbled and bumbled with some big fist foot punching, right? Didn't happen. So I peek through my guard and I hear, oh my God, you okay? Oh my God, you okay? And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. What? I look around, I still can't find the guy. Look down on the ground, face down, lying there, breathing heavily.
Oh.
There's something they used to tell us in martial arts, in boxing, any other thing that you do well, golf. If you do a technique so well, you totally transfer the energy from your body to the target. You don't even feel it. There's no injury to you at all. That's what your goal is. It's hard to get there because there's so much movement and other stuff going on. But what happened was I shifted back. He moved twice as far as he had been doing before. So he stepped right into my range. And when I spun around, that heel caught him on the side of his face, right on the chin, and knocked him out, sorry. So he's down and I panic. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is where everybody gets to beat me up because I've done the bad thing here. So I reached down to check on the dude, pull him over. He's conscious now. And he sees me and is mad. So he pushes me away. Now I'm feeling embarrassed because I'm trying to do the right thing. Well, at that moment, all the black belts starts to come over. Now I'm thinking, okay, here we go. But they go to him. I step away, concerned, apologizing, and the kids in the studio surround me like a clown with candy. They just surround me and they say to me, oh my God, you spun around, you knocked out old doodle head Robert because he's so mean and you are so, I want to learn how to do that. I'm like, yo, why don't we keep that down? I am not trying to be the center of attention right now. And can you show us this thing, right? I was really concerned about what happened because it was not my intention to hit the guy. So I pull back and I'm standing off to myself. And the interesting thing happened. Master Tom comes over to me and says, hey, he kind of needed that. He'd been a little rough lately and disrespectful, and he has this thing about him. And at that point, he let me know something that I guess he wanted to share. Turns out that his family had donated all the equipment to the gym and had done a lot of the remodeling. So he's kind of financially responsible for it. And he kind of gets away with a lot of stuff. But we have told him, he said, but I think he's got it. He got the message today. And I said to him, oh, okay, cool. Is there anybody else you want me to knock out? And I go, I'm just kidding, because I was nervous. He says, but you're welcome to come here anytime. And I guess, when I look back on it, I was thinking to myself that I still choose to use my words first. But I also understand that if ever time comes when you need to lay hands on somebody, that it's better done with the good intention, the right intention. Thank you.
Mr. Ty Fans. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Ty. And actually, I think that is the name of your new book, The Mofo in the Dojo.
That's good. I'm going to use that. That's great.
Good. Oh my God. And I think that's a terrific theme.
I should tell you, it turns out that dude was a defensive lineman for the University of San Diego.
Oh my God.
So he was kind of a brute.
Did he ever come looking for you?
I was worried. He might, but here's what I did. I packed my stuff up. I thanked Master Tom and I said, you know what? I'm going back to Altadena, brother. I appreciate you. I'm out. I never went to a San Diego football game.
Oh my God. God, I want to laugh. Should we put you in the federal witness protection program?
I would love that. long as it comes with food and a gym, I'm good.
Also, you had you said something, I think it's going to be a great theme night. Maybe we should do it for May. There's always one guy.
There's always one. I've never gone to it. You can always tell who it is because they're all looking at you and
Yes.
kind of evaluating your abilities and not really talking to you until you show them that you're good. Then they want to, oh, what did you learn that? That's
next
pretty
to the mute
good.
button.
I like that technique.
There's a mute button, and right to the right of it is video.
Hello.
Yeah, stop video.
Yeah. There, now you're out. Francis Peach is there.
Okay. It
All right,
just
we
says
found-
Fran Peach, right?
I
Hello,
think we should be.
Fran
Wait, hey, Beverly, when someone's talking like that, we should have the technology to be able to appear in the
I hope
room
it's
and go,
okay.
stop that.
The ties
I think so.
is way too long.
All right,
Wow.
we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you, Mr. Ty Fans.
Thank you.
And you know what? I think Mr. Dan Farron should be here by now. So I'm gonna bring him up.
He is here.
He is here. Of course he is. Yay. All right. Thank you, Dan, for coming in. Dan is our producer. He is our go-to guy for doing a one-person show. He is our dramaturge. He is solid gold storytelling, baby. Mr. Dan Farron.
Sorry about that. Boy, I look at my picture and I'm looking more and more like Buffalo Bill Cody all the time. I tell you, this is really kind of weird here. But I was thinking a lot about this this theme tonight. And you know, when you've been around for a long time, you have many nights to choose from. You have big nights, you have small nights, you have happy nights, you have sad nights. But I think that of all the nights in my life, sometimes the ones that stay with me the longest are those outhouse rat crazy ones where you're just trying to survive, and it's not a big night, but it's such a freaking nightmare weird night that it never really goes away. And I think one of the biggest nightmares that you can have is trying to go someplace and not being able to get there. And that's what has happened to me. It's a reoccurring dream I have from time to time. But this one night, you know, when that happens, everything's working against you, and you can't forget those nights. I know I tried, I can't. I still dream about them. I had a bus ride recently. That was a nightmare opera created by Ed Wood and fueled by all of my nightmares. During the day, you see, the bus is a nice place to be. It's a nice place to be. It's people are going to work, people are going home, they're going to school, they're running errands. But at night, when the sun goes down and the moon is shining bright, the Metro bus grows fangs and a really hairy face. And it becomes the place that you really don't want to be unless you have to. Now, I ride the bus every night from 7:30 to 8:30. And during the pandemic, you know, it's not been a real safe place to be. Now that I'm vaxxed, I feel a little bit better. But I would get on the bus and yeah, I would wear 2 masks. If I could have worn 12, I would have done that. One on every part of my body, every orifice that I could. I wore a plastic mask in front of me. I wore gloves, and I would literally get off a bus if I felt it was too crowded. The truth of the matter is that, you know, the Metro buses say you have to wear a mask, but the drivers sit up front in a little cage now, and they really don't do anything. You know, you're on your own. It's kind of like that. Hi, welcome to the 414 bus. You're on your own. That's what it feels like. And when I get in often, you know, I do have nice rides, ones that are very relaxing, ones that I can maybe doze a little or read or even write or listen to podcasts or music. Those are really nice trips, and they make for really boring stories. So that's not what I'm going to tell you now. You're not going to hear about that tonight. No, that would be a really boring theme night. This started with a really bad day at work. And let's face it, I've talked about this before. All we all really want to do at the end of the day is just go home. We all just want to go home like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. We just want to go home. And when Mary Lou was teaching preschool, she had this little kid with a sing-songy voice. And you know, you would say, "Why are you feeling so sad?" And he goes, "I want to go home. I want to go home." And Mary Lou and I for years had just said that all on a regular basis. "How you feeling today?" "I just want to go home." So work was really bad that day. And as I go out the door to catch the bus, I have this very happy, perky security guard. And she says to me, "Well, tomorrow is another day." And I said, "You know, it has to be another day because we really shouldn't have 2 days like this in a row, really and truly." So I go out and I get on the bus, and all I want is just to be left alone. Now, the first thing I do when I get on the bus, besides put on the gloves and all the mask and all that other kind of stuff, is I take off my tie and I take off my ID badge. So one, nobody will know what my name is. And two, no one will choke me with my own tie. So the ride starts. It's a very crowded bus. It's in North Hollywood. I am not going to win any awards from the North Hollywood Chamber of Commerce about how I feel about North Hollywood. But the bus is crowded. There is no social distancing. It doesn't exist on the bus. So what I usually try to do is I get on the bus early and I put my bag next to me on the seat. And I'm sorry, you know, you could be 9 months in labor or whatever. I'm just not going to give you that seat at this point. I'm going to be selfish that way. So the bus is really crowded, and this guy gets on with a golf club because you never know when you want to, you know, take some putting classes in the middle of a bus ride or whatever. He gets on. Then another man gets on, and he's wearing a T-shirt with an AK-47 on the front of it, and he's listening on his phone to this preacher, and the preacher is yelling and screaming in the background. And the guy sits down and he takes off his mask and goes, "Well, we don't need this shit anymore," and throws it down on the bus. And it gets a little stranger from there. Because as the saying goes, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. So now this strange woman child gets on. She's not wearing a mask, and she's pulling a suitcase behind her, and she looks like the Wendy's girl or Pippi Longstockings. If the Wendy's girl or Pippi Longstockings was a fighter for the Ultimate Fighter Championship. She's a very strange looking fire plug of a woman. And she goes up front and she throws down her suitcase and she goes, "Well, I'm here." So the ride begins. And my goal is it's an hour ride. So as the ride goes on, people get off the ride and it gets lighter and lesser and it gets better that way. And we're just riding it, but it feels like nobody's getting off the bus. And the guy with the golf club is like taking a little, like hitting debris on it. He finds beer cans or candy wrappers on the floor, and he's hitting them with the golf club. And the guy in the AK-47 T-shirt, you know, who is making my spider senses tingle, something fierce, is just going, "Yay, praise Jesus," yelling along with this minister on the phone. And then little Pippi Longstockings decides that she's going to push the button to get off at every stop and not get off. So this has become a nightmare ride already. And we get a little farther down the road, and the door opens, and this very frail older woman gets on the bus, and she must be like around 4'11" or 5 feet tall. And she's very low center of gravity. And she has both her feet wrapped up. And this guy is like literally pushing her, like in those cartoons where you're pushing a rock up a hill, like Wile E. Coyote does, you know. He's pushing her onto the bus, and she speaks no English. And even I sit there and go, I can't sit here and make this poor woman stand. So I get up and I give her my seat. And the guy turns to me and says, "She's getting off at Reseda." Well, I guess somehow now by offering her my seat, I am now responsible for this woman. So she sits down, and luckily a seat opens up in front of me. And we start riding a little farther down the road. So the guy with the golf club, he gets off. because obviously there's no holes in one to be had that evening on the bus, so he gets off. Pippi now lays down on the floor of the bus and uses the suitcase as a pillow. I boil my shoes when I come home after riding the bus. She's laying down on the bus and she's listening to this music and she's singing along very loudly from a transistor radio, which she either stole from the Smithsonian or she broke into a what's left of the Radio Shack and took one. I haven't seen a transistor radio in years, but she's laying there, she's singing along, and the driver just keeps driving. A little farther down, we're about halfway home. I'm getting close to home because all I want, I got 8 more stops and I'm home, and all I really want to do is I want to go home. I just want to go home. And we keep riding. So Rosita's coming up. So I turn to the woman and I say, Rosita. And she goes, oh, and she gets up and she's kind of unsteady and she rises to her feet. And I said, this is Rosita. And she touches my shoulder very nicely and she pats it like, thank you. And that would be a very sweet story if it ended there. But of course it doesn't. So the door is open and there's 4 people standing there. And I see a person with a walker in the back. It's by a gas station. And there are 3 guys there. And when the door is open, the woman's standing there. And one of the guys reaches out to her like, ah. So I figure, oh, this must be relatives or friends, whoever, who are picking this poor woman up because her feet are in such bad shape. That I'm sure they'll take care of it. I just should stay out of the way. I don't want to really, because I was thinking about helping the woman off the bus, but if these guys are going to help her, then fine, just go ahead and there you go. So the woman walks toward them. 6 hands reach out to grasp this woman and they drop her right off the bus into the gutter. I hear her howling and then they're all trying to help pick her up and whatever. And it turns out that these people don't know this woman at all. They just thought they wanted to help. This is the reason why there are no more flying Walendas. This is the reason why. Because they dropped this woman like she was hot. I mean, it was bam in there and she's howling. Now the bus driver suddenly wakes up because this is, one of 9 million litigation cases against the Metro bus every year they always have. And she wants to make sure. So she gets up. The guy with the AK-47 t-shirt decides this is a good time to leave. And that makes me very happy. He gets off. Pippi gets off and takes a cigarette and lights up her cigarette. She uses one of those lighter things that you use to start barbecues. This is what she carries to light her cigarettes with. And she's running around the gas station by the pumps with a lit cigarette, talking to everybody in the cars. So in the meantime, they take the poor woman and they walk over and they sit her down and she's doing okay. She is able to walk. And they call the fire department and the bus driver gets on and says, the one thing you really don't want to hear. Well, we're going to be here for a while. So I send a text to Mary Lou and I just, sit there for a while and try to read and try to relax. And about 30 minutes later, the fire department has shown up and she's doing okay. And the bus driver feels there's no way that she can get in trouble. So she goes ahead and starts. Now I'm only like five stops away from home. And there's only about 3 people left on the bus. There's me, there's this woman sitting over by the door, and Pippi Longstockings. We almost lost Pippi back at the gas station because she was spending so much time talking that she almost missed getting on the bus when it was going to leave. And I was kind of hoping that was going to happen because I thought it was funny that her suitcase was still on the bus. But she gets back on and she's riding along. And at first she starts yelling at the guys that dropped the woman. She starts screaming at them like she knows them, and she doesn't. And they're just looking. They get off at the next stop. They're so rattled by this. We go a little bit farther, and they play this recording on the buses now that says, "It is a federal law not to wear a mask on the bus." And all of a sudden she starts jumping up and down going, federal law, federal law, federal law, federal law. So Pippi gets off at the next stop. I don't think she intended on getting off at the next stop, but the driver, I think, tricked her. I think the driver told her this was her stop, and she got off the bus because she looked back kind of like, hey, and then the bus drove away. So we get to my stop, and it's just me and this other woman who's been riding very quietly this entire time. And she, as I get off the bus, she hands me a pamphlet. I turn to the bus driver and I say to the bus driver, driver, thank you very much for a very interesting ride home. Because I was thinking, I'd have to pay, 2 drinks and a cover charge to see this kind of open mic. And I get off the bus and I look down at the flyer that the woman has given me. And it's this: God's message to you. God's message to me: I should have taken Uber. Back to you, Beverly.
Thank you, Mr. Dan Farron. Oh God, the indignity of bus riding. Thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, you came up with a great theme for tonight. Oh God, this would be a sweet story, but that ends there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
God, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, at least, unlike, I'm sorry, what was the woman, not the pixie woman?
Pippi.
You don't have streaks on your back from where she laid down on the bus. Think about that. That's a good thing. I have to bring up this woman who, if you do not know her, and who doesn't know this woman? Suzanne Wirtz is known far and wide. She does her stories everywhere. She produces really terrific storytelling shows. She is an extraordinary storyteller. And I say that with no bias at all, even though I love her deeply. She gladdens the heart and she invigorates your senses. That's the kind of storyteller she is. Miss Suzanne Wirtz.
Oh, thank you, Beverly. So I've got a multimedia presentation. I'm going to start with a song.
I've never seen that dress you're wearing, or the highlights in your hair that catch your eye. I have been blind, lady in red.
Aw.
So the way he tells the story, I nearly broke his heart. I left him hanging. There Chris was, down on what was then a strong appendage, but what is now the bum knee our family calls old Betsy. And all I had to offer him was a blank stare and a curt response. But that's not how I remember it at all. What I said that nearly crushed his dreams was, one day, when the time is right and you ask me properly. What I meant was, why the heck did you let me go out looking like this if your intention was to pop the question? Seriously, I ask again, why? But he didn't get it. 27 years later, and he still doesn't understand why a girl might want to be dressed up for what has the potential to be one of the most romantic moments of her life. He says, it's yet another sign that he loves me just the way I am. I like to think that I'm more than I was on that now pivotal night, more attractive, more together, more alluring, less self-absorbed. In this journey back in time, it is December 1994. We decide that our Christmas presents to each other will be his and her watches. We are 28. We are not wealthy. These are not Rolexes. We are about to purchase Seikos, and they feel extravagant. We head to Fashion Square across from our condo. The parking garage at this mall collapsed during the Northridge earthquake earlier that year. Many of the buildings across the street from mine were red tagged. We were lucky. I was renting at the time of the quake. Several pieces of the IKEA furniture that I'd proudly built myself did not stand the force of the temblor, including the cabinet that supported my fish tank, which crashed to the floor, ending the lives of my poor goldfish, Tuna Turner and Tanker Bell. The screws and bolts I had left over actually did have a purpose. As soon as the shaking stopped, I had the odd presence of mind to change my answering machine message, knowing that family members were likely to call once they woke up on the East Coast and heard about this one. It was clear that this earthquake was big enough to make the news. I rolled over in bed and popped an AC/DC cassette into my bedside boombox and played "You Shook Me All Night Long" while recording a quick message about being okay. Then I went downstairs to assess the damage. The kitchen was a wreck. The refrigerator stood open with bottles of broken condiments and shattered wine glasses and plates on the linoleum floor. The carpet was soaked with fish tank water and my dead pets. There were a few visible cracks in the walls. The owner foreclosed on the unit, and Chris, who'd recently started his own real estate company, realized he could get a great deal on the place where he was already spending a lot of time. So in an odd turn of events, my boyfriend became my landlord. We made a deal when he bought that unit that summer. We'd live together for 6 months and decide if this relationship was for keeps. So Christmas happened to fall at the 6-month mark. Things were going well. We had a future, I figured. I thought he thought so too. But when we were in that jewelry store sizing up the Seikos, I figured it might be worth showing Chris the kind of rings that intrigued me. But as I began leading him to that part of the store, he turned ashen. Actually looked like he might get sick. I decided maybe I was rushing things. Maybe I needed to give this guy I loved a little more time to come to terms with the next steps. I backed off. We bought our watches and we left the store. What I didn't know is that he already had a ring. He wanted to throw me off the scent. If he looked ashen, it was because he thought I was on to his master plan. So, the evening before I was headed to North Carolina to spend Christmas with my family, I came home from jogging around Lake Balboa and Chris casually said, "Get ready, baby. I'm taking you out to dinner so we can celebrate Christmas a little early." "Do I have time to shower?" I asked. "It's up to you," he said. I figured we were just going to one of our regular local haunts, Casa Vega or Pineapple Hill. He thought he was throwing me further off the scent by encouraging me to go out wearing my own sweet scent of sweat. I pulled on a pair of black leggings and I grabbed a pilled long black sweater off the closet shelf. "This'll be its last wearing before Goodwill," I declared as I put it on. I pulled my scrunchie off of my ponytail, fluffed my hair a bit with the hairdryer, and tied it back with a barrette. I might have put on a little mascara. We were just grabbing dinner, no biggie. Then when we jumped on the freeway and headed out to hippie Topanga, I still wasn't on to him. When we pulled into the parking lot of a restaurant I'd long wanted to go to, I still didn't see it coming, though I do recall wishing I'd dressed a little bit nicer. The Inn of the Seventh Ray is buried among Topanga Canyon's ancient oak trees, twinkling with little white lights. The food is farm to table, not much meat. Too frou-frou for Chris. He'd chosen it for me. And I'd certainly not expected to find myself here in this place that seemed so magical when we'd regularly pass it on the way home from the beach. If I'd realized I was going here, I'd be in a dress with heels. I'd have clean hair, earrings, even if I'd not known what was coming. So when Chris came back from the restroom and tears came to his eyes as he spoke about our relationship, I thought it was because I was leaving to spend Christmas without him the next day. And when the conversation turned to something about, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," I just didn't get it. I didn't know that he'd been in the restroom trying to build up courage. For all I knew, he was in there eating a hidden stash of beef jerky, not fully satisfied with the cauliflower or the truffle risotto. This poor man. So as he held my hand and he professed his love and said something about getting married, I thought, this can't be happening. I'm not ready. This has to be a rehearsal. He's not down on one knee. There's still time for me to change. And by that, I didn't mean become less superficial. I mean, I wanted to be wearing something sexy. And I said, well, one day when you ask me properly, at which point he said, Suzanne, this is that day.
Uh-huh.
He walked around the table and he got down on young Betsy and he opened up the box, the ring, and my mind was swirling with surprise and disbelief. And I guess I hesitated before I said, yes. Of course, I said yes. And it was sweet and it was romantic and the twinkle lights were sparkling as everyone around us clapped. And it was a moment I will never forget. But 27 years later, I still want a do-over because I had this red dress that would have been perfect for the occasion. Thank you.
Yay.
Suzanne, words, hooray. Thank you.
Yay.
I have a great love for Into the Seventh Ray. That's where we got married. I think I was wearing a wedding dress. It could have been sweatpants. I'm not sure, but it's a great place. I urge you to go back. So much. Beautiful
I
place.
didn't know you got married there. That's
Yes,
awesome.
it's beautiful. And we go there regularly. I love the Into the Seventh Ray. Very romantic. And I hope you get your second chance. And I hope you're all dolled up like Hello Dolly at the finale of Hello Dolly. Completely dolled
There
up.
are a few people in this room who know Chris. I think they know I'm not getting another chance at that.
You didn't get, even Casey got another chance at back. Damn. All right, we're going to wrap up this show with a man who has grace and style and finesse. He is, you know what, if you were going to get a bouquet of storytelling flowers, he would be the most prominent one and you'd want to smell him all the time. I have no idea what I meant by that, but it was meant to be more of a compliment than it sounded. He is our own, our very favorite, Mr. Dan Tierman.
Thank you. And Suzanne, I'm sure you were adorable that night. Anyway, you know, many disparaging cracks have been made about this year's Oscars, the Oscar ceremony. Boring, snooze. One angry person on Facebook wrote, "Is class and sophistication a thing of the past now? I sure wasn't watching the Oscars." Wow, I mean, calm down. Nothing is the same as it was. I hope we all realize that by now. I, for one, rather enjoyed the Academy Award 2021, though admittedly it paled in comparison to Oscar night of March 1999, at which I was in attendance as a waiter. It truly was a glamorous and glorious occasion. The big winner that night was Shakespeare in Love, which captured the Best Picture, Gwyneth Paltrow for Best Actress, and Dame Judi Dench for Best Supporting Actress. Steven Spielberg took home the Best Director trophy for Saving Private Ryan. But my money, the most enchanting performance for my money and picture of that year was a Brazilian film called Central Station. Fernanda Montenegro was nominated for Best Actress for her scintillatingly snarky rendition of a bitter former school teacher forced to take a lost little boy across Brazil to find his father. And she was incredible. The Governor's Ball, the post-show dinner party, was set up in the downtown LA's Music Center. So as the celebrated audience members exited the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, after the ceremony, they'd enter an elegant tent, dramatically lit in a soothing yet mystical blue that enhanced a stunning ice sculpture in the center of the dance floor where 40 beautifully adorned tables encircled the ice sculptured area. There were 20 groups of waiters engaged to prepare the room so that the luminous stars and the industry's finest could continue to experience the illusion of grandeur and opulence. Each waiter was assigned to his or her station for instructions given by a stern captain who stressed the importance and gravity of performing this service with strictest professionalism. As I stood at attention among my group, the captain gave his pep talk. Each waiter in this group has been carefully chosen for your expertise as you will be serving the VIPs. My eyes widened in wonder as I had never done this before and had absolutely no experience. How had I been chosen for this group? Surely this was some kind of divine intervention that I hoped wasn't going to turn into an old Jerry Lewis comedy. However, it turned out to be a breeze. All I really had to do was serve some of the Oscar winners and their family members a plate of the most fabulous steak ever created. I was charmed by Dame Judi Dench and her husband. They were both short, cute people, real earthy theater types. Dame Judy seemed most concerned about her daughter. Did my daughter eat? Has my daughter gotten dessert? I loved the way she said that word, daughter, and she seemed to say it so many times. My daughter, my daughter, my daughter. I kept having a strange fantasy, almost like a flashback to another realm, where Dame Judy, her cute little theatrical husband, and her helpless daughter lived in a quaint cottage in a picturesque village of the English countryside, and I'd visit them. They just seemed like such nice people. Gwyneth Paltrow was also at my table, her Oscar next to her plate, and her mother, Blythe Danner, next to her. Blythe seemed strangely irritated, but when I approached Gwyneth and offered her a bit of champagne, she gazed up at me, her eyes sparkling, and said, "No, thank you, I have vodka." Our eyes locked, we smiled, and for a magical moment, she and I were one with Oscar. I had remembered seeing her when she was just a little girl, when I was an apprentice at the Williamstown Theater Festival in Massachusetts, and her mom was in the plays. And this was our destiny. Like a kid in a candy store, I tiptoed through the talent with my handy bottle of champagne. I saw Steven Spielberg's friendly mother, Leia. As I poured some bubbly, I said, "You must be very proud." She looked up and said, "He never ceases to amaze me." But not one to be a snob, she pivoted and said, "But what about you? Are you happy?" "Well, not as happy as I'd like to be. Not as happy as you're going to be." I stood corrected, but I wish she could have been more specific. "I'm still waiting, Leia." My romp continued, and I spotted the team from the film I loved, Central Station. They all looked embittered, clearly taking their lead from Salon, Yolanda Montenegro, who had angrily told the press the awards were rigged against her. Like a shark, I headed right for her from behind. "Champagne?" And then she did the most thrilling thing, which made my night. Without even looking up, she waved her arms in an excessively dramatic gesture, thus rejecting any favors from me. I was gleeful, for she was just like that nasty yet amusing character she played in the movie. Maybe she didn't deserve the Oscar after all. She had obviously been playing herself. The waitstaff captain pulled me away from all this action to stand at attention at another part of the room where guests were milling about. I was just supposed to stand at the post he placed me at without any specific task, so I did just that. Actor Geoffrey Rush, who had just lost the Best Supporting Actor award for Shakespeare in Love, was suddenly standing next to me looking rather glum. Meryl Streep, having found Geoffrey, suddenly stood just inches away from me. She too had just lost her bid for the Best Actress statuette. Here I was, a hair's breadth away from these two losers, as they tried to very subtly console one another without any awareness or interest in my very close proximity to them. Logically, I chose not to leave the post at which I was commanded to stand, and besides, they came to me. I was relishing in my ghostly invisibility, like a background player, with a supernatural power of sorts. When the waitstaff captain approached me with an icy glare and pointed at me to stand back and give the stars room to commiserate in privacy and dignity. I loved Meryl's alabaster complexion and soft skin, though. Lovely. When the party was wrapping up, I met with my friend and neighbor, Gary, who was also on the waitstaff. Still feeling adventurous, we ran into the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion Theater, where the awards had just been held a couple of hours before. We wandered backstage into dressing rooms and ended up standing on the stage at one of the podiums where presenters and the host had just been shortly before. Gary started improvising like we were two actors presenting an award. I was game, but when I looked out at the now empty theater, I tried to speak, but felt like I was going to faint. A surge of stage fright overtook me despite the empty seats before me. I could feel the remaining vibrations and energy of the event that had so recently ended. It was as if the spirits that had been in those seats just prior were still lingering, like ghosts, just as I had been an invisible, unseen, servile ghost to most of the people at the dinner reception. As I hearken back to that relatively normal world we lived in some 20 years ago, I somehow contemplate what Eugene O'Neill wrote in Long Day's Journey into Night. It was as if I was a ghost belonging to the fog, and the fog was the ghost of the sea. It felt damn peaceful to be nothing more than a ghost within a ghost. And so, in bidding you all a fond good night, I'd like to thank the Academy for a most memorable evening. Thank you.
Dan Tierman, thank you so much. Oh, thank you for giving us that little nugget. Because you see, the rich and the famous are a lot like you and me, embittered and drunk. What's the difference, really?
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Dan Tierman. That is our show. As always, just extraordinarily wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Let me tell you, in case you might have forgotten, who was on this terrific, extraordinary show, Lila Silverin. And do not forget, be on the lookout for Lila's book, Chalkboard Confidential. Vince Sheffalu, Ty Fance, Dan Farron, Suzanne Wirtz, and Dan Tierman. Let's have another round of applause. Thank you. And let us not forget Miss Amber Greenberg. Whoo. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that showed up. Always, I say this every time, but I'm truly tremendously grateful. You guys could be doing a lot of things, probably all concerning Netflix, and you're not. You're not in front of Netflix tonight. You're here. Means everything. Keep you informed, because hopefully in about 6 weeks we'll be able to meet again in person. Zoom is all right, but meeting in person is so much better. And we'll let you know about that. And I think that's it. All right. Huge love. Stay well, stay positive, and soon we'll be making eye contact with each other, more than just a screen. Actual eye contact. Blessings to all of you. Thank you all. Deep and true love. Deep and true love.